Whoever said that there was a deadline of when we could release our December wrap-ups? Whoever said that we had to wash our hair for videos and make ourselves look presentable? I don't know, but I'm not about to try that. So, hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in December 2021. I am aware that it is now the 20th of January. Indeed, it could be later when you're viewing this, or even later, dependent on when I can be bothered to edit it, because that's just the type of person that I am. If I could get away without having to edit these videos, then that would be a great thing indeed at the moment. This is just paper. See, desk's a mess, bed's a mess, room is a mess, because it's as though everything exploded when I tidied for Christmas and I just discovered all these boxes and bags of paperwork and books and I have nowhere to store them. Either way, two books that I won't be discussing in this video that I read in December are A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens and The Christmas Chronicles by Nigel Slater, for they are both rereads. And, well, if you don't know, when I reread a book, it tends to mean that I liked it beforehand. So, without further ado, let us talk about the books that I read in December. Firstly, I read A Sprinkle of Sorcery by Michelle Harrison, which is the second book in this series of books featuring are they the Withershins sisters? What are we calling them? Their grandmother gets taken to be put in this prison again, and someone has kidnapped her, the youngest sister, Charlie. Once again, Charlie's being kidnapped. She's used to it by now, so Betty and Fliss have to go and rescue her. They are joined along the way by this other young girl called Willow. As with most children's fiction, there is a twist in this book, and it's a twist that I saw coming from far away, but I don't know whether readers of the actual market would see that twist coming. To me, it seemed very obvious. I didn't care for this book. Let's just say that. Straight off the bat, did not care for this one. It might be because it was a pirate book and I've never really been a fan of pirates when they had that huge thing whilst I was a child. Did not care for them. Couldn't be bothered with Pirates of the Caribbean. There's just something I find about pirates that doesn't generate any sort of excitement within me. However, I'm aware to a lot of people, pirates might mean something good. Anyway, we've been talking about deformity and scars for years. Yet the only villainous character we saw in this one of the only villainous characters we saw in this is visibly scarred and has disabilities and deformities to make it very obvious that he is a villain. And although there was some discussion about the fact that he did not become a villain until he received these scars and these differences in body than the norm, or what we've come to see as the norm, I found myself a bit put off by that. I don't think that it was necessary. This character didn't really have enough to do with the book and it never came up again. So it did feel a bit like a somewhat tacky, easy way to emphasise that this person was a villain. It just followed the plot line of the first book too much and I didn't care for it at all, any way, shape or form. And I was reading this because I'd said that I would buddy read the sequel with Emily of Novell Novels. So let's talk about that one. A Tangle of Spells by Michelle Harrison, which is the third book in the series, does stuff differently than its predecessor. It was spooky and it was creepy in that sort of way that I want my middle grade fiction when it promises to be spooky and creepy to be. Here we didn't have the same plot that we'd had in the previous two books. Charlie did not end up getting kidnapped, and there was still a very real threat that whilst they are no longer on the island, whilst they have moved away from the island that we've come to know in the first two books, there is still a big connection to that island, not just with these sisters perhaps having to settle into this new home, but it also shows how magic isn't just in this one central place that we've come to think of magic as being, and perhaps the magic that they now have to get used to is a bit more terrifying. There did feel like a very big life or death threat hanging over the sisters within this story that I didn't actually know where it was going to go. I think with middle grade fiction, we always come to expect that everything's going to work out well in the end. And I could not see how this one was going to work out well, especially when we were seeing the consequences of the very real dark magic that was taking place within this book, when we were hearing about what had happened to previous victims of the antagonists within the text. We got to see some growth with the sisters' relationship as well. We're aware in all the books, and that's something I've appreciated. They've had a very realistic relationship, and the growth here comes from the fact that they're actually using the experiences they've had to influence the way that they behave and the way that they act going up against these new foes and this new darker magic that they haven't come to expect before. They've never fought against magic themselves. They've always been able to use their own magic as something to help them. Only this time, it's not as big a help. They have to rely on themselves and their own ingenuity a bit. And I thought that that was a very good thing to show that even with their magic, without their magic, they can just be just as good as fighting adversity as with their magic. It also felt very much like a bit of a holiday special, taking the sisters away from the island that we've come to know in the previous two books gave this a whole new feel, and also I suppose that's what made it more creepy. We'd got used to the creepiness of the island because that was just what it was. It wasn't necessarily this dark place because we knew it. So here, the sisters don't know the place, so you don't have that sense that everything is going to be okay because the sisters know what they're getting into. I thought it was a brilliant sequel and was very pleased to have read this one, especially after being so disappointed by A Sprinkle of Sorcery. And I'd say that if you were looking for a book to read in October for that certain other festival we celebrate, then this you'd probably... I'm calling it a Halloween book. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that this book would be very suitable for Halloween. So, you know, you could buy all 3 books if you haven't already, or get them out the library or wherever you get your books from, and just read them in preparation. I know that Emily and I have just agreed that we'll be getting the 4th one and hopefully buddy reading that when it comes out. So that is something to look forward to. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. This is the 20-something book in the Discworld series, and one that I started in September but didn't finish until December because I've been putting it off because it dealt with a plot point that I don't like, which is when somebody goes into the past, and there was a specific part of the Commander Vimes going into the past that I didn't like and that I've seen used before, and it's something that I never like to see. However, Terry Pratchett talks about so much going on in the world in here, and it felt very timely. He's talking about corruption in the government, he's talking about being honourable, and he's doing it all with the humour that I've come to associate with him. So whilst it's not a plot device that I like, and I did avoid listening to this one for the longest time because I didn't particularly care for that plot point, I actually ended up thinking that this could be my favourite of the City Watch books. They have been my favourite of my listening experience of the Discworld novels. Originally I thought that it would be all about the witches, but it seems that it's the City Watch, and Night Watch, whilst also showing us how Sam Vimes came to be Sam Vimes, removing him from the situation that we've come to know and showing us how he has helped to change the city, even though it might still have corruption within it. We got to learn more about who Sam is and where he came from. And again, whilst it might not have been something that I have liked before, I did like how this was done, and I liked what Terry Pratchett was saying about the world, or the allegory he was using. I think that the allegory was at its strongest, and I think the humour was at its strongest that it has ever been in this book, which means that this is actually one of my favourite Discworld books, probably right towards the top. If we had a top 5, which one day I might do, then this would definitely be up there. Then we have Elephants Can Remember by Agatha Christie, and I did a vlog, and it finally ended up online the other day, of Agatha Christie and the 4 books that I read, and I'd lost all the footage that I had where I discussed Elephants Can Remember, and it transpires I've actually lost the book as well. So it seems that I'm really working to forget this book. So this is a Poirot novel, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I'd seen the plot done quite a few times already. I'd read Five Little Pigs that had made it as my favourite Agatha Christie that I've read for a very long time. I'd just listened to Halloween Party, which also gets referenced in this book. And the issue with Elephants Can Remember is that Agatha Christie is knowingly writing a plot that she's done before of these people who have died, and Ariadne Oliver is having to solve it, and the whole Elephants Can Remember phrase just comes out of nowhere because she's trying to find the elephants that can remember what actually happened all those years ago so that she can piece together, alongside Poirot, whether this person was actually murdered by the person I just remembered this book now. Yes, and it doesn't just, yeah. So Elephants Can Remember. So a person's parents were killed in a murder-suicide, and Ariadne Oliver is being tasked with finding out whether it was actually a murder-suicide because a goddaughter of hers wishes to marry somebody, and his mother doesn't care for the pairing because this girl might have inherited a tragic backstory. So Ariadne Oliver goes to Poirot, and they decide to try and solve it. Five Little Pigs, which I'd read, was written in this literary style and was done incredibly well, whereas Elephants Can Remember, which comes out quite late in Christie's career, is written with barely any sort of description at all. It's very much like a radio play and could easily be adapted. The entire time reading, I felt like I had read it before, and it just felt incredibly obvious to me what had happened, but I didn't know whether I'd actually heard it or seen it before. But the entire time of reading this one, it felt familiar, and I did not like it. I did not like the writing style. I did not care for the mystery because I felt like it was very easy to figure out who done it. I'd say that this is one of those that should be read by someone who wishes to complete reading all of Christie's works, because it's a plot she's done before and it's a plot that I think she's done better elsewhere. However, I was glad to finally see Ariadne Oliver in print because I'd only ever heard or seen her in adaptations. We come to Honeycomb by Joanne M. Harris. This is a novel following the pursuits of the Lacewing King, which is inspired and maybe comes from fairy tales and folk tales that Joanne Harris has told on Twitter for many years now. Here we have a novel that is told in vignettes about not just the Lacewing King, but these fairy tales and folk tales that are used to make up the world around him and also give off the impression of what other people thought about the Lacewing King. I'd say that this is a story of a man's descent due to a king's descent due to his arrogance, and him having to relearn behaviours, examine himself, and then maybe come out the other side. This is shown in the very literal descent into some sort of hell dimension. There are a lot of different dimensions in this. All the worlds come into play. This is very much fueled by the author's knowledge of Norse mythology, various other mythologies, folktales, folklore, fairy tales, all that fun stuff is pulled together in this collection of original fairy tales and folktales that are used to create this rather stunning world. It took me a while to read this one. I read it slowly, but I felt like it needed to be read slowly. Despite the fact the stories and chapters are rather short, it had this almost jigsaw quality, where every one of the stories is a different piece in the puzzle of creating this life of not just the Lacewing King and his family, but the world. There are whispers throughout, as it says on the back, long ago, and where is it? No, it's not there. There it is on the front. There is a story the bees used to tell. And there is a lot in here of, well, maybe that's it. Maybe all these stories are like different bits of honeycomb coming together to create the entire narrative. I don't know, but I thought it was brilliant. Yes, there were a few short stories in here that I thought were a bit repetitive and unnecessary. But once again, similar to Night Watch by Terry Pratchett, Joanne M. Harris is using allegory about the world today to tell the story she wants to tell. And also, it's very much a case of there are loads of different variations of opinion of what the reader will think the story is about based on their own experiences and beliefs. And I particularly enjoyed that. We all know that I am a fan of Joanne Harris, so it should come as no surprise that I love this book. I don't really like to throw the word love out. Adore? Enjoyed? I don't know. But if anyone has read the Gospel of Loki or the Testament of Loki or the Rune Lights books, Rune Mark books, then it felt as though Joanne Harris was finally being able to tell her own variations on myth and legend. And I was particularly thrilled by that. It was like being in the hands of a skilled narrator, someone who knows the oral tradition of storytelling and managed to get it down on the page and says, listen, we're going to do this how I want to do it, and you're going to have to come along for the ride. I would love to hear this book read. Throwing that word love out again, twice in one video. Honestly, you can tell I'm caffeinated. Beautifully bound book. Grand illustrations indeed. Brilliant storytelling. And just what a person wants to be reading on those cold December nights. And then I read The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street by Helen Hamp. I've got to look it up because I kept telling everyone it was called The Duchess of Bloomsbury and I kept forgetting that street. The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street is now a story that I've read twice, but we'll get into that in my January wrap-up. And sees the creator of 84 Charing Cross Road, Helen Hanff, finally making it to London a very long time after some of the events within 84 Charing Cross Road. But the book has come out and has been a success, and she has been invited to London. And it was just brilliant. It was a tourist's eye of what London would be like. Helen Hanff had clearly built up expectations as to what London would be like over the years. And it was poignant to see the character somewhat disappointed. Well, she's not even a character. This person somewhat disappointed by the world she found. But it was also, I was happy for her to finally be getting to explore London like she'd wanted to do for years. I like that we still had letters in here and we still had that touch of communication, and it was diary entries. And considering throughout 84 Charing Cross Road, Helen Hamp is talking about how she wants to read diaries and that's what she wants to be reading. You could tell that she has what it takes to be a diarist, so I felt like I was in safe hands with that story. Once again, there is wit and there is self-examination, as well as just simply telling us the tale of what she's getting up to in London. It's not really that huge a book to be examined or anything, but it's nice just to go along with, similar to 84 Charing Cross Road. That's a book lover's book, and the second part feels like the book that was created for writers, and it felt like the culmination of finally getting to see Helen Hanff get to London as she'd wished to do throughout the entirety of 84 Charing Cross Road. So it felt like getting to see this person's success, and I was happy for her. I was just really glad to have finally read that one. It's only another short, quick tale to get through. The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street is a successor to 84 Charing Cross Road in that we've had the beginnings and we now get to see what all those letters meant and what they led to. And it just felt like another idea of what the power of books and the power of literature and literary friends can lead to. And someone being thrust into an unknown world, not just a world, or not just London, not just a tourist coming to London, but somebody who has now achieved success, a writer now thrust into a world that she doesn't know of that success and what that could possibly mean for her in the future. So yes, it's not 84 Charing Cross Road, that we did read that, but The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street by Helen Hanff. If you've read 84 Charing Cross Road and you haven't read that one, then do try and get that one read as well. And them's the books. If you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.